What a privilege to be here, and how beautiful is the sight from here, seeing all of these souls gathered together because of your belief in peace, of your belief in the power of the human spirit when it is convinced about doing something good. I'm here with Farai, Tefo, and Khanya. They're going to introduce themselves. They're young leaders from South Africa who are going to ask me questions, and I'm going to respond to their questions. I'm going to start with Farai.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Advocate. I'm so privileged to be sharing the stage with such a phenomenal woman and one of my mentors. My name is Farai Mubaiwa, and I am an intersectional African feminist. I am committed to empowering young Africans through an organization I run called Africa Matters, where we change the African narrative. The question I have for the Advocate is that the frequent media reports about corruption in our government have become somewhat normalized. Some people would also say that we have a corruption culture, and this has often resulted in the despondency of young people. Advocate, what advice would you give to us as young people who want to stop corruption?
Well, thank you, Farai, for that question. Firstly, we have a big problem of corruption in the world and in South Africa. It is not yet a culture, but it is a systemic problem. Of course, if you don't stop it, it could become a culture to the point where it is acceptable. At the moment, it is not acceptable. I know this because of 7 years of being the public protector of South Africa, a job that required me to investigate corruption and maladministration, among other wrongs in state affairs. What I learned was South Africans reject corruption. And one of the big cases I did involved some renovations that were done in the president's house. And it was the people that worked in the system that blew the whistle. It was also the people in the system that helped us to investigate this matter. Lastly, it was the media in South Africa. So just my role as a public protector has proven that. But also when it came to implementation, after I'd made a decision and said the money should be paid and certain actions should be taken to prevent impunity, some of my decisions were not implemented. Ordinary people in the streets took up the matter and decided that it can't happen. So ordinary people are making a connection between poverty, inequality, and corruption. And ordinary people are realizing that if we are to advance social justice, then we must end corruption because it takes away resources. What can young people do? The kinds of things that you are already doing right now, which is providing your own leadership to build the society that we want to live in. Getting young people to go beyond protest, to taking action, to hold people accountable, but more importantly, to be ethical leaders, the kind of leaders we need. I'm going to proceed to the next young person who asks questions, and that young person is Tefo Mokhine. Over to you, Tefo.
Thank you so much. My name is Tefo Mokhine, mining engineering student at Wits University. I'm the founder of PNP Mentors. It's a mentorship program for the young people in South Africa. My question is regarding to a phenomenon which is very prevalent in South Africa and in Africa. It is as follows, that in the instance whereby government protect their officials from prosecutions for the corruption the authorities or political heads committed, what would you suggest that the ordinary people and civic organizations do?
Excellent question, Tefo. My experience again as a public protector shows that most of the time corruption does not go with impunity. People are investigated, but it depends on how high are you on the food chain. If you're very high and close to the powerful, whether or not you'll be investigated for corruption depends on whether the person at the top of the pinnacle actually is committed to corruption, is committed to ending corruption. And that's not just a South African phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon. How can you deal with that? I think what can be done is putting mechanisms in place where civil society goes beyond protest to action. We've seen in South Africa organizations such as Corruption Watch taking these matters to court. We've seen opposition parties taking these matters to court. But I was saying to these young people earlier off stage that young people are the most advanced generation. Young people of our time are the most advanced generation when it comes to the use of technology. I would like to see you young people, all of you, use technology to hold people accountable. We've seen, for example, in the last case that I dealt with in South Africa, it was called State of Capture. After I made a decision on what should be done, that a commission of inquiry should be instituted, and secondly, that certain people should be prosecuted, some of that has not happened, or most of it has not happened. But the media has used technology. They came up with something that is called Gupta leaks. But I would like to see young people send messages to those in power. Elections are coming in 2019 in South Africa. Elections are coming in various times of the year in all parts of the world. Shouldn't young people be at the forefront of sending messages to those who want to govern that if you don't end corruption, if you don't hold these people accountable, we are not going to vote for you, because what they've done is taking away resources for development to their own pockets, or to the pockets of the elite. But also corruption undermines justice, because if people in the enforcement agencies are bribed, they don't do their work. Those agencies are repurposed to protect the interests of the powerful. So civil society, roll up their sleeves, young people lead. But more importantly, be the kinds of people that Mohammed spoke about. Be ethical leaders. And I'll speak very briefly later about the kind of work we're doing under the Tuma Foundation, which is a Thuli Madonsela Foundation, to build a new layer of leaders, those that are ethical, more purpose-driven, and more committed to service. And the last person to ask a question is going to be Khanya Mkoto. Proceed.
Hello, everybody. My name is Khanya Mkoto. I'm a mathematician and a social entrepreneur who's passionate about making changes within the education, entrepreneurial, and employment sectors. My question is, what mechanisms can be put in place to ensure that state funds are allocated and used accordingly to actually benefit the citizens of the country?
Well, the first thing, thank you, Khanya. Again, that's a great question. The first thing is to make sure when we elect people into public office, we elect the right people. And if we elect people who used to steal when they were outside government, or who didn't have the right ethics, they will be worse when they go to government. That's my experience as a public protector, is that if somebody had no ethics outside, once they get public power, they're going to use that public power to advance themselves and to ensure that they do wrong things with impunity. So that starts with who do you elect into power. Secondly, you have to layer this thing between civil society, national and global. In civil society, I would say civil society should be engaged to know how much was budgeted. I noticed, for example, I'm studying at Harvard, or I'm doing research at Harvard at the moment. I found that in the state of Massachusetts, they lay out the total budget out there for people to know how much do you have. And they invite civil society to contribute to how that money is going to be spent. So one of the ways to make sure that the money is going to go to the right place is elect the right people. 2, transparency in the budgeting process, so that every person, including the people we refer to as Grandmother Dlamini or Gogo Dlamini, knows how many millions of dollars did we have for the budget, and what was budgeted for. And then when new things are being paid for, the society should be able to ask, why is this money going away to what was not budgeted for? Again, you young people have the power to assist, to make things transparent, to use social media, to tell people that this is what was budgeted for and this is where it should come from. At national level, government should use the same system, but at global level too, I think we need to club together to prevent illicit transfer of monies in these developing countries. A lot of the money I investigated in the state of capture investigation has gone to India, has gone to Dubai, But what are those countries doing to prevent that illicit outflow of money that has been stolen from the people of Africa?
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Thuli, Farai, Tefo, and Khanya. A pleasure to have you here.